Okay, so first of all, make sure that you have a very sharpened pencil. Take your paper and start with folding it over like this. And so the thing we're looking for is this straight edge along here. So you're basically going to come up with your own paper ruler. And then you want to get a continuation of that over here. Then we're going in and putting the y-axis. So you want to give yourself room here because you're going to be drawing this part. So if you have a T-square for this part, that would be helpful, but if you don't, just line up this top straight edge up to the top of your paper. So when you're starting these bargs, start from the center. So you can see right over here, here's our x and y axis. You can see that triangle shape right here. Start with that triangle, using a little bit of the side of my pencil, and I'm working very lightly. And I'm pressing a little harder as I get a little bit more confident in where the placement is of that line. I'm going to go in and look at this next shape here. I'm going to continue off of this. And for something like this form right here, we can break it down into 1 angle, 2, 3. So I'm looking for 1, 2, 3. Again, I'm doing this by eye. I'm using the side of my pencil. And I'm basically trying to get this to be exact size. So we're doing what's called a sight size drawing of this, meaning this is exactly the same size as I'm seeing it on here. So I'm looking to see, okay, do I see those angles? 1, 2, 3. Connects like this. It's, again, the side of my pencil. I can clearly see this breaks down into 1, 2, 3. Small angle there. Okay, so this is us training our eyes to become more sensitive to angles. Okay, so you don't want to just jump right in and use your ruler, because you actually can come in here and use your ruler and just go like this. And we actually are going to do that soon, but not yet. You can go like that and go, okay, well there's that width. So, and because this is actual size, also known as sight size, they should line up. And it looks like me doing this by eye was really close. I was off by just a hair on that side. So you are actually going to use your ruler, but you're going to use it to check your measurements that you've done by eye. So you're not going to start with the ruler. Okay, so avoid jumping in with the ruler. Continue this by eye. Okay, we're looking at the lines, and we're thinking about this in a linear sense. So now we're going to take a moment to look at the entire mass here. So look at this whole shape and compare it to this whole shape. So like just the way that this swells here should be similar to this. The overall angle and so on should be similar. And so far, okay, so far this works. There's some things that I'm going to adjust, but before I get into it, I need to see the mass more. So I'm going to go in and put in that little, it's almost like a tail here. Like if this were a mouse, we could see a small tail. And here, let's say this is a mouse with like sort of half mouse, half duck. Here's his little duck bill. Okay, so just so that you can see this little animal a little bit better, this mass, I'm going to put an eye here so you can see him. Little eyeball. Right, I'm going to put another eye here. my little creature. Right, like this is his little duckbill. Okay, so when I look at this, I see a few things that are off, like his duckbill here and mine is too small. So now I'm going to go in and just carve into this line with my eraser. So I'm looking for those 3 angles that we see here. So it's important to get the thickness of these lines as well, because the thickness will affect the inside negative space that we're seeing in here. So the thinner the lines are, the wider the negative space will be, and it'll just look off. So you really want to match the thickness as well. So I'm thinking this might be too short, the height here. So again, I'm going to do this by eye. Make that a little bit taller. So now this is a little bit like a domino effect. If I don't get all of this correct, then when I go to measure this based on this, and I'm measuring this based on this, if this is wrong, if we're too tall, too thin, and so on, everything else is off. So you really want to nail this first part before you move on to the next step. So once I've got something down like this, and I've basically drawn it by eye as much as I can, now I'm going to go in and check my measurements with the ruler. So let's do that again. Let's go in from here to here. So that should line up. Okay, center to here. And now let's check, okay, center line. Up, that line is a little below that. They're about the same. This width is roughly that width. It's just a tiny, tiny bit smaller. So let's check that. Right, so here. Okay, so looks like I can get a little bit smaller. Okay, and then let's check down here. Okay, and by eye, pretty much on the money. So I just had that. That's gonna just connect more like that. Okay. Okay, so now I'm just gonna clean this up. So this line that we put down is kind of giving us the information for the next one. So again, side of my pencil. And I'm squinting my eyes, I'm looking at this white space in here, that's our negative space. I'm seeing, okay, I can get a little thinner. Okay, I'm going to continue that around. Again, I'm just working by eye. Let's go here and let's establish that vertical line. And at some point, it changes direction and connects with this. Okay, so what I'm looking for something like this is how it's thinner here and how it gets a little bit wider here. So I should be able to see that, so I'm going to squeeze that. Once I have this additional line across here, then we're going to do our measurements again. Let's do another check. So that should end right there. very top line. Okay, so, let's bring this over. Okay, so it looks like I was a little bit short. It actually ends right here. So this whole line goes up one. Okay, and I'm going to check now on the other side. So this line starting right here, and that starting right there. Okay, so that's good. I have it on the line, but not starting. It's like maybe in the middle. So I can give myself more room there. Let's widen that out. And I'm going to push this so this whole line comes up, so give this more of an angle. So as it goes from here to here, let me get a little bit more of an angle. Then that dips down. Again, you can use your kneaded eraser for this as well, like just make a flat edge and carve into it. So for my students, I'd want to see this is so subtle. It's barely noticeable, but I'd like to see something like that, these two angles. Okay, so then we would go on to this part of the eye. Because again, you can see that that's kind of repeating here, the two angles. So I'm going to just, again, look by eye. And see that line starting about here. Again, it's so important to just do this by eye at first. Because the entire point of this is to train your eyes to become more sensitive to angles. I'm looking at it like this, side of my pencil. And when I'm doing this part, I'm actually looking at connecting it here and trying to imagine this big large shape right here. Okay, so you should really be seeing, we're trying to imagine a shape like this. Okay, that shape fitting in here. I'm looking at the negative space here and just asking myself how many of these fit in here. See how many of these widths would fit in there. Squint your eyes, look back and forth. Keep asking yourself, is that angle parallel to that? Maybe I can get flatter. Look at the width, compare the width. I think this could get longer. So bring it in a little more. And another thing you should do is right where this line changes direction, this point right here, an imaginary vertical line down. You should see how it lines up with this intersection. Okay, now I'm looking at this and I can see one, maybe two large angles here and then a vertical. Again, side of my pencil, one, and then I see how it gets thinner here. Okay, and so we can see pretty clearly these three angles. Okay, and now I'm going to do another check. Center, top, center, top. I'm a little bit past the top. It's pretty good. Nice. Okay, so I just checked a little bit with the height and the width. That worked out. And then in here we can see almost like an arm. His elbow's here, his arm wraps around, and then there's if you think of this as like a hand, here's his wrist. Okay, so here's like that kind of this punching, think of like that as a hand, right? This punching fist. Okay, now it's important, that's mass thinking. Okay, so it's important that we see masses within this as well. It'll really help you to get this. And it's also important to see these big shapes. Shapes that we see in here, I see a slightly different one. This is more like, if I connect it here, that my X and Y, so I get something like that. So in order to figure out this height, simply look at what you've got going on down here. Roughly, it's a little smaller than this, I think. So when I look at that, compare it. Just for that big arc. So I'm constantly switching gears. I go to linear thinking, look at the big angle, look at the big arc, switch gears into mass thinking. Now I'm doing the same thing as I was doing there, except now I'm seeing a shape like this. So my X and Y axis. So I'm looking at that big shape, looking at this big shape. See this point right here, imaginary horizontal. About halfway from here to here, so let's see halfway. If you look really closely, you can see there's almost like two angles here.